ago, Marvel made a huge announcement at the D23 Expo, where they finally made it clear that they're going to be bringing the Thunderbolts into live action. This decision has been rumored to have been in the works for a long time, and I feel like we've all been kind of waiting for Marvel to make it official, and now it's here. To be honest, I was really excited about the concept of the Thunderbolts in the MCU, but I will say that my excitement for the project really started to take a hit when they actually announced the roster.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
But before we get into that, let's take a look at the Thunderbolts and who they actually are and where they originate from. So the Thunderbolts themselves originate in the comics many years ago, and basically what they are a bunch of anti-heroes, villains, couple of heroes here and there, and they're all thrown together to basically form a ragtag group of people who either have things to expunge from their records, or they have a lot of skeletons in their closet, or just are a bunch of people that want to work outside the law, and they're being utilized to do things that the government don't necessarily want to be known. The more you think about it, this really is the Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad. And there's been a lot of characters throughout the years who have been in the Thunderbolts, whether it's original characters like Thunderbolt Ross as Red Hulk, Taskmaster, I think even Luke Cage was a part of it one time. That being said, the Thunderbolts have been known to have an extremely diverse roster. And that's why I was really confused when Marvel made the announcement that they were going to be rolling with this particular roster of characters. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at who they have. So going in order from how they appear on the promo art, we have the lady whose name I can't pronounce. She's kind of like the head honcho behind the ordeal. I thought she was based off of Madame Hydra, but I really don't know if they're going to even bring that up in any kind of future projects. We got her. Then we have Ghost, we have Red Guardian, Yelena Belova, Bucky, US Agent, and Taskmaster. And let me tell you, I really think this is a huge misstep by Marvel.
I have a bad feeling about this.
But before I get into that, I want to go through each announced member and kind of give you my thoughts on how I think they're going to fit into this movie. So first off, we have Ghost. Ghost is the main antagonist from Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I thought she was pretty good in it. I thought the movie itself was easily one of the most mid out of all the MCU movies, but I thought she had a lot of potential, and now that she's kind of, not necessarily redeemed, but she has a lot more of a character to work with, I really feel like she could benefit from having a lot more focus on her character. So to be honest, I think this is actually a good fit for the Thunderbolts. So I would say that the decision to put Ghost in there is a really good idea. Plus her power sets are pretty cool, especially if she learns how to control all of her phasing. I really feel like that's an awesome power that we can really explore going into the movie. But the addition of Red Guardian is really confusing, especially because he didn't really have a great arc in Black Widow, and he seemed to be a lot more of the dumb brute who does all of the heavy work as opposed to really having a fleshed out character arc. Maybe this is why they wanted to give him one in Thunderbolts. I feel like there's a lot of other characters who would fit the mold of that particular character better than he does. So I really don't know what Marvel's doing with that, which leads me into Yelena Belova. I think this character is a good addition to the Thunderbolts. I think she has a lot of character that needs to be explored, and I think she has potential to be one of the most intriguing characters. We saw flashes of her even more in Hawkeye. Every time she's been on screen, she's been a fan favorite, and I have really enjoyed her. Although I will say, when it comes to the framing of how they've shot this promotional poster, it really seems like they're gonna make her out to be the leader of the group, and I don't necessarily think that's a good fit for her. I think she's a better fit as more of the, how do I say this? More of the moral high ground of the group, where she's able to kind of stir the rest of the group into doing the right thing. Not necessarily being the leader, more so the conscience of the group, especially considering it looks like they're really leaning towards her becoming the next Black Widow. Then next up you have Bucky, and here's where I start to really have problems. Why in the world would you choose Bucky? Are we really gonna go back and repeat his same character arc of being a villain slash anti-hero who's conflicted about himself? He really has already had a perfect arc from Captain America the First Avenger leading all the way into Infinity War and Endgame, where he got to see a true progression of the character, and in Falcon and Winter Soldier you see that he's still struggling to find his purpose, but he really doesn't need any more redemption, and that's why I'm so confused about why he's on the Thunderbolts. I mean, maybe he's misguided and thinks that this is how he's going to be able to atone for the stuff he's done in the past, but this doesn't really feel like Bucky, and maybe they're just throwing him in there to have some name recognition, but I genuinely feel like this could be a problem because I don't think Bucky as a character fits in this Thunderbolts team, which segues perfectly into US Agent. Again, this is another person that I think is a good addition to the team. He can kind of have that Captain America bravado, but yet also provide the stubborn, arrogant, stuck-up super soldier that we really could benefit from having on the team. And maybe they brought Bucky in because of his relationship with US Agent to kind of create a little more headbutting. I feel like we got enough of that in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and this would be another forced repeated arc. But I feel like with US Agent, he has a lot to prove, and I feel like especially after getting his butt handed to him in Falcon and Winter Soldier, he's gonna be desperate to try to prove himself after being absolutely humiliated humiliated. And finally, we have Taskmaster. Taskmaster is another one of those things where I just don't understand why they did this. Taskmaster was already an iffy villain in Black Widow. Okay, who am I kidding? Taskmaster was one of the worst villains in the MCU so far, in my opinion. But if we're gonna rock with the whole villain has a tragic backstory and is a compelling emotional character at the end and is redeemed, okay, cool, we'll go with that. But that's the thing, this character is redeemed, and I really don't think putting this character in a anti-hero slash slightly supervillain team-up movie, don't really know what to think about that. They've already portrayed her as a very weak character, and unless they decide to go with the Tony Masters route and they recast her and maybe bring it, not so much recast her, but have a reason why there's another Taskmaster running around and give us the original Tony Masters. Now my thing is, I feel like there's two specific characters that are really missing from this. First off is Baron Zemo. Why the heck is Zemo not in this? He's a brilliant tactician. He's proven to be an extremely cunning leader. Why not have him lead up this group? I feel like this is a huge wasted opportunity. And maybe they change it. Maybe they say something in the near future where he's a surprise addition. But as of right now, that's a huge red flag that he's not in this group. The other one is Abomination. Why couldn't we have taken out Red Guardian and put in Abomination? This is a perfect example of having a character that's just rip-roaring ready to go. And I feel like Marvel really wasted him. I know She-Hulk hasn't completed its entire run as a TV show yet, but I feel like Abomination would have been a perfect segue to go from that show into the Thunderbolts, where he's extremely conflicted and wants to turn over the page and become a good guy, but constantly has that whisper in his ear to start being bad again. I feel like that's a great arc. Why can't we have that in the Thunderbolts? I feel like that's a wasted opportunity. Another problem I have is the fact that there's a lot of redundant skills inside this group. I mean, think about it. Between Red Guardian, Taskmaster, and US Agent, these are all a bunch of souped up super soldiers who all pretty much have the same type of abilities where they fight hand-to-hand combat. Both Red Guardian and US Agent both use a shield similar to Captain America's. I feel like they all just kind of merge together awkwardly and none of them really have a good fit.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
Also think about Yelena, Bucky, and Ghost. They're all agents who used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra's S.H.I.E.L.D. when Hydra was taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. And there's nothing that really sets them apart other than the fact that they all have been duped by their organizations and are all looking for their own purpose. This kind of coherence doesn't make sense with the Thunderbolts because the whole point is having a bunch of weird characters and different origins that all don't fit well together and they have to learn to work together. And just having personalities that don't mesh doesn't make that justified in my opinion. I really think they need to have a bunch of different unique power sets in order to make this feel like a really unique team. Also, if I'm just going off of Kevin Feige's comments a couple weeks ago, he basically mentioned the Avengers that we know and love are dead. And he's basically wanting the Thunderbolts to become the new version of the Avengers, not necessarily when it comes to the heroic nature of the team, more so when it comes to the next big team since the Avengers are technically all dead or have moved on. My response to that is if that's really gonna be the plan, then they really need to hit it out of the park with this. You can't be hyping up a team that's going to rival the Avengers potentially and only have them consist of a bunch of characters that we already know or who have character arcs that have completely been closed off and finished. Now, before it sounds like I'm completely dunking on this team, I really am excited about the concept of the Thunderbolts. And so I decided to take the liberty and put together my list of who I would have on the Thunderbolts and why. And this includes people that I would replace. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and say I would definitely keep Ghost. I think Ghost is a great addition and I think there's a lot of room to work with her character like I mentioned earlier. I would still keep Yelena Belova because I do believe, as I mentioned before, she has a lot to add to the team. And I would also include US Agent. I feel like those three characters are good additions to the Thunderbolts. When it comes to the rest of the characters on the team right now, I would say let's go ahead and get rid of them all, and here's what I would propose as my replacements. First off, I would have the Punisher, and this would be the same Punisher from the Daredevil TV show and from the Punisher TV show that was originally on Netflix. I think this is a great opportunity to bring in Frank Castle into the official MCU, kind of like how they're doing Daredevil with She-Hulk. I feel like the Punisher has a lot to prove, and especially with his reputation of not working well on teams and wanting to be his own person and inflict justice in his own way. Not only does he provide that ground level military experience, there was one particular Marvel theory that caught on a while back where I think it was the dump truck who hit the attacker who was coming after Nick Fury in The Winter Soldier. That possibly could have been the Punisher who was doing the right thing to potentially save Nick Fury's life. That's a great way to segue into this team and kind of say, hey, he's been here the whole time, you just haven't seen him yet. Next up, I know I mentioned this before, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, let's go ahead and throw Zemo in there. Let's make him the leader. Let's make him the guy who runs everything. There's really not much else that needs to be said when it comes to him because I've already said it before. I'll just let his actions speak for itself when it comes to Civil War and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And not just when it comes to being the brainchild behind the operation, he can also be the finances behind it, especially in a way kind of being a rip-off Tony Stark. Again, it's right there, Disney. It's okay to use him. And finally, again, as I mentioned earlier, Abomination. I would take out the Red Guardian and I think Abomination would be a much better suit for this team. Unfortunately, I had to lower my expectations for having Red Hulk in this movie, especially because of the real-life actor's tragic death. And although the Red Hulk would have been my first first pick for the brawn behind this whole operation. I feel like if we can't have him, then let's put Abomination in there. This is a very conflicted character who is just now being brought back into the MCU with She-Hulk, and I feel like having him in there provides not only the big muscle, but then also provides that duality between Tim Roth's human character and whenever he transforms into the Abomination. Again, a perfect example of someone who doesn't work well with a team that has to learn how to work with them, but yet provides his own totally unique power set and his own unique abilities. When you look at the final team that I put together as my proposition for the Thunderbolts, you can see that there's a lot of characters in there who very much differentiate when it comes to personality types and ability and power sets. And this makes them even more intriguing because they have to work together in order to reach an objective, and they can't do that unless they work together. This is a huge opportunity that I hope Disney doesn't fumble. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Who would you want to be on the Thunderbolts roster if you're not content with the lineup as it is? Do you think there needs to be a couple changes here and there, or do you think they need to overhaul the entire lineup? Go ahead and sound off below. I really can't wait to hear what you guys come up with. That being said, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and guys, I'll see you next time.